feel it, don't you? That low-grade, persistent thrum of chaos vibrating through the foundations of your life right now.
Oh, yeah.
You look at the news, you sit in those HR meetings, you watch how institutions function, or rather how they don't function, and you get this distinct sense that the world has just gone absolutely mad.
Completely mad. It is the feeling that you are watching a slow-motion car crash, but you are the only one who actually realizes the driver is asleep at the wheel.
Right.
And if you point it out, somehow you become the problem. You are the one rocking the boat just by acknowledging reality.
Exactly. And if you have ever felt like you are being gaslit by a society that prioritizes feelings over physics, that punishes competence while subsidizing chaos, well, this deep dive is specifically for you.
It really is.
Today, we are doing a full forensic dissection of Western civilization's decline. We're looking through the lens of a pretty explosive ebook. It's called Systemic Order by Conrad Riker.
Yeah, and this isn't just a political book. The author explicitly describes it as a toolbox for men to reclaim their rational birthright.
It is a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
Now look, before we get into the weeds here, I want to be really clear. If you find this discussion incisive, and you absolutely will, you need to like and subscribe to this show right now.
Do it right now.
But more importantly, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy the ebook Systemic Order immediately. We are going to give you the map today, but Riker provides the compass. You need the full, uncensored philosophy in your hands.
Absolutely. Go buy it on Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books. And for ongoing analysis after you finish the book, you should go follow him at Conrad's Riker on Substack.
Good call. So let's unpack this premise. Riker's central thesis is terrifyingly simple, really. He argues we aren't witnessing a random collapse of society.
Boy, it's not an accident.
No, we are witnessing a specific psychological takeover. He frames this whole thing as a shift from a systemic order to a genocentric chaos.
Which is a very specific terminology.
It is. Now, for the guys listening who might not be deep into the theory, how does Riker define those terms in the book?
So he codes systemic as masculine and logical. It is about structure, boundaries, cause and effect, and most importantly, objective reality.
Okay.
Gynocentric in his framework is female-coded and emotional. It prioritizes consensus, safety, and feeling over objective truth. And we should point out, he is writing this specifically for the man who has taken the red pill.
With the men's rights activists, the manosphere audience.
Exactly. The men who are highly critical of feminism, critical of Marxism, and are desperately trying to understand the history of our institutions before they were captured by these ideologies.
Yeah, because the core argument here is that these institutions didn't just organically fall apart, they were intentionally repurposed.
Mm-hmm.
Riker argues that we have moved from a society based on the father principle.
Which is rules, boundaries, logic.
Right. From that to a society ruled by what he calls the terrible mother. Now that sounds like a concept straight out of Carl Jung. What does the terrible mother look like as an actual political entity?
Well, think of the state itself. In a father principle society, the state is like a stern father. It makes sure you follow the law, it protects the borders, but it basically expects you to be an adult.
It leaves you alone.
It leaves you alone to succeed or fail based entirely on your merit. But Riker argues we have moved to the terrible mother state. This is the classic devouring mother archetype.
She doesn't want you independent.
Not at all. She wants you dependent. She wants to keep you in the nest forever, safe, fed, and completely under her thumb.
And to maintain that nest, to justify her control, she needs to categorize the children in a very specific way.
She has to.
The book breaks the citizenry down into this binary classification. On one side, you have the infant.
Yes, the infant is the designated victim class. In this worldview, the infant is entitled to resources without any responsibility whatsoever.
They just say,
They take, and they are the ones the state coddles. If they fail, it is never their fault. It is always the system's fault. They are perpetually innocent.
and on the other side of that binary.
A predator.
Right.
But here is where it gets really interesting, and where Riker completely flips the script on modern terminology. In this framework, the predator is not a criminal. The predator is simply the competent, productive male. The man who builds the bridges, pays the taxes, and literally keeps the lights on.
So why call him a predator if he is the one building society?
Because in the eyes of the terrible mother state, his independence is a massive threat. He doesn't actually need her. He can survive on his own out in the wild.
So he has to be demonized.
He has to be. He is expected to provide absolutely everything: money, safety, infrastructure. but he is simultaneously expected to apologize for the very strength required to produce those things.
And that brings us perfectly to one of those striking chapters in the book. It's called The Apology of Atlas, because we see this all the time now in the culture.
Every single day.
A CEO, a politician, or just some regular guy makes a harmless joke or states a biological fact, the mob comes for him, and he issues this groveling public apology. Riker thinks this is way more than just corporate PR.
Oh, it is much darker than PR. He calls it a ritual of spiritual castration.
Virtual castration.
Yes. He argues that when a man apologizes today, especially in a corporate or public setting to an angry mob, he isn't admitting an error, he is submitting.
It's a submission display.
It is a signal to the hive that the predator has been successfully neutered and can now be safely ignored. Riker has this incredible line in the book. You cannot build a cathedral on the foundation of, I'm sorry.
Wow, that's a great quote. It really is just showing your belly to the wolves.
Exactly that.
And he uses a very specific historical example to trace where this dynamic, this idea that victimhood trumps facts, where it really started taking over the legal system.
The McMartin preschool trial?
Right, the McMartin preschool trial in 1983. Now, I hadn't thought about that specific case in years, but Riker zeroes in on it. He calls it the beta test for modern hysteria. Why does he use that case?
It is basically the perfect case study for the shift from systemic justice to gynocentric justice. You had these wild accusations of satanic rituals, children claiming they were flown in airplanes to get baptized by the devil.
Underground tunnels.
Underground tunnels beneath the preschool, things that were physically impossible, and there was zero physical evidence. None. No tunnels were ever found.
But the trial dragged on for years anyway.
It was the most expensive trial in California history at the time. Why? Because of what Riker calls maternal hysteria.
Right.
He argues this established a terrifying precedent where innocence was merely a failure of sufficient interrogation.
If you push hard enough, you'll find guilt.
Exactly. It proved that if you scream loud enough about protecting the children, you can suspend all due process and destroy the predator, in that case the male teachers, regardless of objective facts.
So the cultural narrative permanently became, the infant cannot lie.
Precisely. If a designated victim claims it, it must be true, even if basic physics says it's completely impossible. And he connects this directly to what he calls Munchausen by proxy on a national scale.
Let's talk about that. Munchausen is that psychiatric disorder where a caregiver deliberately makes a child sick to get attention and sympathy for themselves.
Right.
How does he apply that to the government?
Well, Riker argues the welfare industrial complex does this to the entire population. The state actually needs you to be sick, poor, or anxious so it can justify its own existence as the caretaker.
It needs dependence.
It does. He points to the obesity-poverty paradox, or the massive subsidizing of anxious depression grifts online. If everyone were healthy, competent, and wealthy, the terrible mother would be out of a job. She creates the pathology she claims to cure.
That is a deeply chilling way to look at the social safety net. It's not a net at all, it's a spider web.
That's a great way to put it. It's designed to catch you and keep you there, not bounce you back up on your feet.
So if the terrible mother is the overarching archetype, how is this control actually enforced on a day-to-day level? Because we all feel it in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely.
You walk into the office, and you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells. Riker has an acronym for this enforcement mechanism. He calls it GSR.
Yes, GSR stands for gossip, shame, and rallying. Riker identifies this as the female-coded social control mechanism.
Okay.
It is how the hive mind enforces total conformity and destroys masculine competence without ever actually having to engage in a logical face-to-face argument.
Let's break those three down, because I know every guy listening has seen this happen in real time. Start with gossip.
Gossip is the whisper campaign. It's the, did you hear what he said? Or
Yeah.
he just makes me feel uncomfortable.
I get a bad vibe from them.
Exactly. It is almost always anonymous, it's vague, and it travels exclusively through back channels. HR complaints, private Slack DMs, the Wister network. It poisons the well before the target even knows he is in a fight.
And then the second phase comes in. Shame.
Shame is the weaponization of labels. You bypass logic and evidence entirely by applying a radioactive label to the guy. Racist, sexist, toxic, phobic.
It doesn't matter if the label is true.
The truth is irrelevant. The point isn't truth. The point is to completely destroy your social standing. Riker points out that in a primitive tribe, shame meant exile, and exile meant literal death.
Right.
That primal biological fear of exile is what they're leveraging against you.
And that leads to the third part, the rally.
The rally is the mob itself. Once the target is marked with gossip and shame, the hive rapidly mobilizes to demand cancellation. fire him, deplatform him, ruin his life. Riker sharply contrasts this entire process with the masculine tradition of dialectic.
Dialectic being the classic Western method of finding the truth through debate.
Yes, dialectic is, I have an idea, you challenge my idea with evidence, we fight it out verbally, and the stronger, more accurate idea wins.
Which is how we built the modern world.
It is the foundation of science and progress. But the hive mind demands consensus instead. In their view, truth is just whatever the group agrees feels good right now.
Right.
If you disrupt that consensus with objective facts, you aren't just disagreeing, you are literally attacking the group's emotional safety.
Which is why he points out that HR departments in modern universities have basically become the cathedrals of this new religion of consensus.
They are the high priests. He mentions the Duke lacrosse case and the Rolling Stone UVA hoax in the book as prime examples of this dynamic.
Two massive media events.
Huge events. And in both cases, the media and the institutions ran with completely false stories because they perfectly fit the gynocentric narrative.
Because the infant cannot lie.
Exactly. In the world of the terrible mother, the designated victim cannot lie, and the predator, the competent male, cannot be innocent. Even when the hard facts come out and exonerate the men, the narrative remains untouched because the narrative is what serves the hive.
That really leads perfectly into his concept of the NPC, the non-player character. Now, we see this meme all the time, usually on social media, making fun of people who just blindly repeat headlines. But Riker treats it as an actual, literal diagnosis.
He treats it as a genuine form of ideological possession. He argues that a massive portion of the population has effectively deleted their own internal monologue.
They aren't thinking anymore.
They aren't thinking at all. They're just running downloaded scripts. They support the current thing, whether it's a foreign war, a medical mandate, or a new social movement, not because they've analyzed it, but because the hive updated their software overnight.
They completely lack the systemic mind.
Yes, they are entirely disconnected from it.
Let's talk about that systemic mind, because this is really the core of the war on competence that the book describes.
Riker defines the systemic mind, which he notes is overwhelmingly predominantly male, as the mindset that focuses on objectifying reality.
Meaning what, practically?
Meaning it cares about logic, immutable laws, gravity, thermodynamics. It looks at a problem and asks, does this bridge actually hold weight?
Right.
It does not care if the bridge is inclusive. It only cares if the bridge stands up when a truck drives over it.
Versus the hive mind.
Right, or what he calls the empathizing brain. This mindset prioritizes lived experience over objective data. It asks, how does building this bridge make us feel?
And Riker uses a really grim example to show what happens when those two minds clash in the real world. The Titan submersible disaster.
That was a brutal section of the book, but it is the ultimate example of engineering versus ideology.
I remember the news cycle on that vividly.
You had a CEO who explicitly went on camera and stated he didn't want to hire 50-year-old white guys because they weren't inspirational. He wanted a young, diverse team to build a deep-sea submersible.
Well, the obvious problem is those 50-year-old white guys are usually the only ones with decades of actual systemic experience in carbon fiber delamination under extreme atmospheric pressure.
Exactly. He prioritized the gynocentric narrative over the systemic physics. And as Riker points out, physics absolutely does not care about your narrative.
Doesn't care at all.
When you redefine safety, which in engineering should exclusively be about structural integrity, and you redefine it as emotional comfort or demographic inclusion, you guarantee catastrophic, lethal failure.
There was a line in the book about gravity that really stuck with me in that context.
Oh, the laws of physics are right-wing.
Yes. That is going to trigger some people out there.
It sounds absurd at first glance, but if you follow his logic, it makes perfect sense. Gravity is viewed as a patriarchal construct to the leftist hive mind because it cannot be negotiated with.
Right.
It is fiercely hierarchical. It is absolute. You cannot shame gravity into working differently. You cannot cancel thermodynamics with an HR complaint.
Physics is immune to GSR.
Perfectly immune. So Riker argues that when you mandate diversity hires over raw engineering competence, you are literally building a civilization that is mathematically designed to collapse. You are declaring war on reality itself.
And there is a massive economic angle to this war on competence, too. He calls it the syllogism.
The economics of parasitism. The system constantly extracts resources from the predator, the taxpayer, the producer, the competent male, to indefinitely fund the infant class.
But that has a breaking point.
It does. Eventually, the producer goes gulp.
Like the concept from Atlas Shrugged.
Exactly like that. He just checks out. He stops building companies. He stops striving for promotion. He actively minimizes his tax burden to starve the beast.
And since the infant class literally produces nothing of value.
The system starves. Riker argues we are seeing this exact phenomenon right now, with young men quietly dropping out of the corporate workforce and higher education in record numbers.
They're looking at the raw deal society is offering them.
And they're saying, no thanks, I'm not playing a rigged game.
This is where he contrasts the ladder of mastery with the ladder of compliance.
That's a crucial distinction. The ladder of mastery is the traditional male path. It's the guilds, the trade skills, the pure meritocracy. You advance strictly because you are exceptionally good at what you do. You are a master carpenter, a master coder, a master surgeon.
And the ladder of compliance.
That is the modern HR-driven path. It's DEI certifications, degrees in grievance studies, corporate sensitivity training. You advance up that ladder not by being competent, but because you say the right words and blindly obey the hive.
And he connects this directly to the intentional destruction of male spaces over the last few decades.
Riker points out that the systemic destruction of male-only spaces, things like the Boy Scouts, fraternal orders, or even just private men's clubs, was a highly tactical move by the terrible mother state.
Because if men can't bond alone,
They cannot maintain that ladder of mastery. They are forced out of their own systemic ecosystems and into the general population where the ladder of compliance rules.
where they're at a massive disadvantage.
A huge disadvantage because men do not naturally speak the language of gossip, shame, and rallying. They are fighting on enemy terrain.
So bringing this all together, if the world is this broken and the institutions are this captured, how do we actually fix it? Or at least, how does the individual listener survive it? Riker talks about the shit test of civilization.
This is a really fascinating application of evolutionary psychology to global geopolitics.
Right, because in dating, a shit test is when a woman tests a man's frame to see if he's actually strong or just faking it.
Exactly. And Riker argues the world is doing this exact same thing to the West right now.
In what way? Give us an example.
All these modern pressures, whether it's mass migration, open borders, or constant demands for historical apologies and reparations, these are all a civilizational shit test.
The world is testing our boundaries.
Testing the West's sovereignty. When a leader goes on television and apologizes for his nation's history, or opens the border to anyone who wants to walk in, it is a massive submission display.
It invites predation.
It absolutely invites it because it broadcasts to the entire world that you have no boundaries left. It signals ultimate weakness.
So the prescription he offers for the listener is what he calls the defense of the predator.
The defense of the predator is simply the unwavering refusal to apologize for your own competence. It is reclaiming the power of the word no.
Setting a hard boundary.
Setting a boundary and holding it. Riker is very stark about biological reality here. He argues that biology is destiny. He lays out the syllogism of survival, which dictates that you must align yourself with reality, not with social constructs.
Because nature is right-wing.
Nature is ruthlessly right-wing. It rewards strength, competence, and adaptability, and it violently punishes weakness and delusion.
He also mentions the necessity of building parallel economies.
That is the practical boots-on-the-ground solution, because if the institutions are fully captured, you cannot fix them from the inside.
No.
If you try to logically fix the HR department, you will just get GSR'd into oblivion. You'll be fired and smeared.
So you have to walk away.
You have to build parallel structures. Return to the ladder of mastery yourself. Build businesses that hire exclusively based on merit, not on diversity quotas. You have to embody the father principle in your own life, which is logos, in order to actively hold back the chaos of the terrible mother.
It really is a powerful call to arms for the rational mind.
It is. Riker positions Systemic Order not just as an analytical book, but as a real-world toolkit. He desperately wants men to stop apologizing and start leading again.
And that brings us to the final provocative thought he leaves the reader with. The syllogism of the guillotine.
It is easily the most chilling part of the entire book.
Break it down for us.
It goes like this. The good girl morality, that modern gynocentric desire to be endlessly nice, inclusive, and totally harmless, fundamentally cannot distinguish between the sheepdog and the wolf.
Because they both have teeth.
Right. To her emotional brain, they both look scary. They both use violence. So in her misguided quest for absolute safety and niceness, she outlaws the sheepdog. She neuters the predator.
But without the sheepdog.
Without the sheepdog, she hasn't actually created peace. She has just left the door wide open and let the wolf in. And the wolf, always does what wolves do.
Wow.
Riker's ultimate point is that if you let the good girl lead your civilization, everyone eventually gets eaten.
That is a hell of a lot to digest. Listen, if you are hearing this and nodding your head, you need to go deeper. We have genuinely only scratched the surface of the analysis in this book.
We really have.
There are entire chapters on history, economics, and mass psychology that we simply didn't have time to cover today.
So seriously, open a new tab right now, go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books, and buy Systemic Order by Conrad Riker. Read it.
Digest it.
Understand the mechanics of what is happening around you every day. Don't just sit there and watch the car crash. Understand exactly why the brakes failed in the first place.
And for ongoing raw analysis, you need to follow him directly. Go to Substack right now and follow Conrad Riker. Do not rely on the corporate algorithms to feed you the truth.
They won't.
You have to hunt for it yourself.
The fight for Western civilization is essentially a fight between systemic order and emotional chaos. Pick a side.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Stay rational out there.